these fighters are waiting around. They don't really care about legacy. They're worrying about the bag, but then they still want the respect that legacy brings. Yo, this is Trav with Yo Trav Sports Bag. I'm here with Bias right now. We're going to talk the boxing and we're going to get to this conversation ASAP. Before we do that, though, you know what we got to do. You know what it is. You have to hit the subscribe button. If you want to help us out, help this channel get to other people, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell. The alarm bell allows you to get every drop as I drop it. As you know, Yo Trav Sports Bag is talking about many sports, not just boxing. Boxing just happens to be the sport we're talking about right now. So help a brother out. So give us that respect in order to get this thing done. So once again, let's get to the point at hand. Errol Spence, Bud Crawford, two of the biggest names in boxing. They have to fight each other. Bias, what are your thoughts on what's going on with this fight not happening?
Well, I think it's basically Errol Spence taking the easy road. There was that video a few years ago. They were face to face, and he actually told Bud, why not take the easy road? Basically telling him he was going to fight other guys, get their belts, and admitting that Bud would be a tough fight for him. And pretty much, I think he wanted to delay the fight, get his belts, but then he had the accident. So now more time has gone on, and he had his comeback fight. But I don't think Bud is in his radar right now. He still wants to delay it some more.
Yeah, that's unfortunate right now because these guys are right now in their prime. They're not getting any younger. They're coexisting in the same weight class. It reminded me of when Floyd Mayweather didn't fight Manny Pacquiao for 6 to 7 years. It didn't take luster off of the fight, but it also left a lot of speculation after the fight when you wonder what could have been, and it didn't happen. In this fight right now, Bud Crawford is no longer with Top Rank, ran by Bob Arum. In fact, he has a lawsuit pushing racial discrimination, all of these types of things against Bob Arum right now. With Bob Arum out of the mix, why isn't this fight happening?
Again, I think it's Errol. He's not afraid of Bud, but if he sees he can make so much money fighting XYZ, and not having to take that risk against Bud, he's gonna fight X, Y, and Z. It could be the Mayweather effect or the PBC effect. Did the chicken come before the egg or the egg before the chicken?
Yeah, and you talk about the Mayweather effect, and that comes with a lot of waiting, hoping to let a fight marinate. I remember back in the 80s, they did the same thing with Tommy Hearns and Sugar Ray Leonard. Bob Arum was part of that as well. They wanted it to marinate, and they wanted to have it just right before they decided to get in there and maximize their potential of earning. And they did. They put on a fantastic fight. But in this day and age, we're talking about 6 or 7 years in which fighters are not fighting one another, and then they ultimately fight each other, and not necessarily people losing interest. It's just not the same. It'll be back to the Mayweather effect, the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, when people are wondering what would have been if they would have fought each other closer to their prime, because both fighters were out of their prime. Manny was more worn because he still was fighting when Floyd was doing this multiple retirements and doing other things.
Yeah, and I think it's crazy how time flies for these boxers nowadays. They don't fight as often. They might fight 2 times a year. And so the years go by much quicker as opposed to back in the day when they were fighting 3, sometimes 4 times a year. It's just unfortunate. There's a lot of politics, and unfortunately, it doesn't seem boxers are interested in fighting the best to prove they're the best. They're interested in how much money can they get without taking as many risks as necessary.
And that's the facts, because right now, these fighters are waiting around. They don't really care about legacy. They're worrying about the bag, but then they still want the respect that legacy brings. And it seems like that's everyone. That's the new age. This is the way Floyd Mayweather, I guess, set it up. Not only do people want to adopt his style from inside the ring, they also want to adopt his style from outside of the ring. waiting around, calling it business savvies, when it's really detrimental to their careers in terms of the legacy. Now, at the end of the day, you can talk about, I don't fight for legacy, I fight for dollar bills, I fight for money, legacy doesn't pay the bills, saying things like that. But you've chosen a profession in which people are going to expect and have a reasonable expectation of you fighting for the money, but giving them a reason to pay big money to watch you fight.
Right. So that's all well and good. People, they're all about the bag. Well, just be able to accept the criticism when it comes your way also, because boxing fans are going to say, hey, this guy, he's only about the money. He doesn't want big fights, and can't have Twitter burner accounts like Kevin Durant and stuff because you're all in the feud.
Udonis Ugas. Udonis Ugas is fighting Errol Spence in April, and this is a fight that's supposed to have been, I guess, Bud should have been in that spot. It just hasn't happened. We're sitting around wondering why these two could sit around for so long and not fight one another. Bud seems as if he wants to fight. Errol, after the accident, well, even before the accident, he wasn't in any rush to fight Bud. But now after the accident, he's a little less anxious to fight Bud. He'd rather just stay there and then mention names and then still come with fighters that he probably has the edge against, when he decides to fight.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think he's taking that, this is so annoying to me, the A side. He thinks he's the A side. And, he's gonna fight lesser fighters for money and not take the risk like he should.
And right now, Bud Crawford is 34 years old. He'll be 35 in September. He's not getting any younger. And boxing years is almost like dog years. I mean, so things are going by at warp speed. On the other hand, Errol Spence is 31. He'll be 32 this year, so he's not getting any younger as well. And there seems to be a built-in excuse happening for either guy if something goes down and whoever one of the wins or the other doesn't win. They could talk about age. We weren't at our peak, and then the accident that Errol had. Whatever it might have been. The fans from each camp are going to battle as if they do in boxing all the time. But what does this do for either fighter's legacy, whether they fight one another or not?
I think for Bud, I think he's good. Going back to that video when they were face to face, Errol said, let's bet 100,000. Bud came right back. Let's bet $1 million. Let's bet $1 million.
I remember that.
That showed a lot. Bud's not backing down. He's totally confident. And, maybe that might have a little effect psychologically on Errol. He called him out. Let's bet 100,000. And he came right back 10 times that amount.
Yep.
And, maybe Errol's like, whoa, this dude for real. And that's why maybe he's just not mentally prepared to do all the training and be as disciplined as he's got to be to do what he's got to do to beat Bud. Maybe he just, like he told Bud, why not go the easy route?
Bud is a dog. He doesn't want to go the easy way. Bud takes the route that he has taken coming from 130. Now he's at 147. And now looking even at 154, since this Spence fight isn't happening right now, he's talking about taking on Jamal Charlo. Jamal Charlo's a hell of a fight at 154 pounds. Bud wants to go straight to the dog. And if Bud goes up there, there's still work to be done down at 147. You have young bucks down there, but they're making big time noise. Roger Ortiz is one of those guys. Boots Ennis is another one of those guys. Two big names that don't have titles. Definitely two hungry guys. And they could cause problems for either one of these guys. Why not stay at 150? Why not stay at 147? Wait for 154 after you clean up 147.
And why not fight them when they're young? Like when Mayweather fought Canelo. Mayweather probably beats Canelo every time, but if he fought Canelo, I can't remember how old he was, but he was still very young. If he fought Canelo after about 8-9 more fights, maybe it's a tougher fight.
A much tougher fight.
And so they probably should fight the young guys now, because once they get seasoned and they get their balls actually dropped, in boxing, it's going to be that much tougher to beat them.
Well, Crawford's on a hell of a streak right now. He had just, he just came off a win against Sean Porter, who no one's ever stopped before. Not only did he dominate him in the round that he stopped him, he absolutely left no questions about the stoppage, regardless of what happened with Porter's father stopping the fight. Bro, his father stopped the fight for a reason. And,
Yeah.
you know, Bud showed what he was all about in that fight right there. I don't think that he's the problem when it comes down to getting a fight done. If there was no money involved and they had to fight, Bud would be the one who wants to fight.
Yeah, like I kind of alluded to, I think Errol knows he has to go to a certain place if he fights Bud. And he may not just be ready to go to that place right now.
Yeah, and I said before, I don't think fighters are afraid of one another. Fighters are not afraid of one another because this is the profession they have chosen. See, regular people on the outside looking in can always talk about how a fighter is scared. When you get to that elite level, not to mention all of the amateur experience these guys have had, and you get to this point, it's not a fear, a terrifying fear where people just don't want to fight. It's a little bit of anxiety fear because that happens before every fight, and each challenge is different, especially when it's a difficult challenge. But these guys aren't necessarily afraid of one another. I think they're more afraid of what's to lose if they do lose.
Right. Like Errol's not afraid of him, but he knows he's gonna have to put in a certain amount of work, and he knows Bud's gonna be there all night. And why go through that when you know you can basically go through the motions in camp, show up, and win the 12-round fight against whoever?
Well, until then, we'll be sitting back as spectators waiting for it to happen. Probably one of the biggest fights we could expect to have in the next, whenever it does happen, year or two. It shouldn't be 2 years, but it still may happen in that case. This is Travis, Travis Sports Bag, and I have Byers with me who's joined me as a guest to talk about Spence and Crawford, why they haven't gotten together. Hopefully this big fight happens. But what you can do for us as well is hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, help us out with this algorithm, spread the news. We're hitting up on sports, not just boxing. Boxing just happens to be what we're talking about right now, but the goal is to speak on a lot of sports: baseball, football, basketball. You have boxing right here, maybe even tennis. Join us for that trip as I continue to put this thing together. So thanks for watching, and hit us all up. Peace.